Shabbat Lekha, go to Egypt. At the beginning of the story, Abram's fate is still unclear to us. He is commanded to go to the land which Yahuwah will show him. But following his arrival in the land of Canaan, a famine strikes the region. It is difficult to understand why such a fatality falls on the poor man upon his arrival, although we do not really know the time that has elapsed between his arrival and the beginning of the famine. For the moment, Abram still seems perfectly submissive to the Almighty, and misfortune catches him anyway. That was not the punishment or the consequence of a fault, but it was in the will of Yahuwah that Abram, just like all of us, go to know Egypt. Once in Egypt, Abram introduces his wife as she was his sister, and Yahuwah strikes the land with wounds. It was Abram who has slightly distorted reality, and despite of that, it was the innocent Egyptians who were punished. Moreover, Abram is blessed by all kinds of gifts in exchange for his wife that he can later keep, even when the lie has been unmasked. These gifts from Pharaoh are part of the famous fortune of Abram. The basic capital of the people of Israel comes largely from this treasure offered by Egypt in exchange for Sarai. This public treasure comes in part from the goods with which Abraham left his people, and will eventually be supplemented by the gift of Abimelech. Yahuwah then shows Abram what will be the destiny of his descendants. The people will have to follow a similar path to his. After a famine, they will go to Egypt as well. And there they are going to be slaves for 4 centuries before finally leaving it with a very large fortune that will also be given to them by the Egyptians. This fortune is simply the one the people lost by becoming slaves, together with the wages of their hard labor. At the beginning of our journey as believers, we also make mistakes and stumble when we are put to the test successively. However, we must not always suffer the negative consequences of our mistakes. On the contrary, we often come out even more blessed than before, just as Sarai enjoyed divine protection from Pharaoh's misdeeds, and Abram was able to keep the good he had received in exchange for his sister. This is a very comfortable situation. We make a mistake and are not even getting a telling off. On the contrary, we get cuddles from the Father like little children. Many of us would like to preserve this state of spiritual infantilism. It is indeed very good to live on Yahuwah's lap like a little kid, but when the time of adulthood comes and we want to remain children, that is not going to work. For the Almighty has not called us to remain eternal infants, but wishes to make us responsible adults. The only thing that must survive from our childhood is the purity of our heart and nothing else. This heart through which we must judge and understand our neighbor in love and total disinterest. This is perhaps one of the main reasons why many are just stopping after a while without being able to make any further step forward in spirit. Because we reject all responsibility, like young persons who refuse to grow up and remain eternal rebellious teenagers. When we still think to be children, we lie, mainly to ourselves. And in short, we make ourselves spiritually helpless and useless. Unfortunately, we are not the only ones responsible for this unhealthy state. Those who teach us and act as our spiritual fathers are also stuck in the false idea that they will teach us for the rest of our lives, we are simply to sit in churches and listen to and follow the same pastors, week after week and year after year. This Catholic route continues to wreak spiritual havoc, even in the most reformed churches today. But there is another big trap we often fall into. We are harshly rejecting anything coming from Egypt, everything that was part of our previous life. We drastically close the door in front of our past and flee into our religious cocoon, as in a monastery, from which we categorically refuse to go out into the world. Because indeed, it is in this world that our place is, according to the will of the Messiah, expressed in the high priestly prayer. It is in this world that we must carry out our ministry. We cannot be under the world's yoke in spirit, but physically, this world does indeed need our presence. And it is also from this world that comes largely all our fortune, our material goods, and our knowledge in various fields that allow us to fulfill our ministry and to bring the gospel, the good news, to the Egyptians. It would be deeply unwise to reject all this. Neither should we reject all aspects of human sciences, which at first glance may seem to contradict the word of Yahuwah, but we can easily realize that many times they actually prove it. I'm naturally speaking here of sciences based on observation and experimentation, such as physics, chemistry, or biology, and not on assumptions such as the so-called natural, evolutionary, and Darwinist sciences, or even the puppet shows of the NASA, Walt Disney type of production houses, and bearing the title of space research, and through which the masses have been led by the nose and not by space shuttles for more than half a century. But this would be the topic of another teaching of mine. Yeshua also came out of Egypt. There is still a third example of an Egyptian exile in the Bible. It is the exile of our Lord during his childhood, when he was forced to flee the persecution of Herod. Yeshua spent much of his youth in Egypt, fulfilling the prophecy contained in this week's Haftarah, the prophetic portion. The light of the nations had to make acquaintance with these people, the Gentiles, for whom he came down into this world, so that the knowledge of Yahuwah and the redemption should also be offered to them. By this, he showed us the example to follow. It was not necessary for him to know anyone, because he knows everyone originally. Nevertheless, as a man of flesh, he had to show us the way we must go through ourselves if we are his disciples.